last part of my BIOSHOCK reviews with the last parts of BIOSHOCK story Burial at Sea parts 1 and 2, where we actually return to Rapture in BIOSHOCK Infinite, ending what we started in the first game and at the same time starting the whole game trilogy again. Part 1 being released on November 2013 and Part 2 in March 2014. These games take place at time before first BioShock when Rapture was still working place. Part 1 features gameplay similar to that BioShock Infinite, with focus on using variety of weapons and plasmids to fight off enemies. The expansion also introduces new stealth mechanics, allowing players to avoid combat and sneak past the enemies if they prefer. Burial at Sea Part 2 takes place after the events of BioShock Infinite Part 1. With Elizabeth as the playable character, the game takes place in alternative timeline where Rapture has fallen and Elizabeth is working to escape the city and find a way to prevent the events of the previous games from occurring. The gameplay in Burial at Sea Part 1 is similar to that BioShock Infinite, but with some new additions and tweaks. Players take control of Booker DeWitt, who is now private investigator in Rapture. As in previous BioShock games, players explore the city, collect resources, and engage in combat with various enemies. The story of Burial at Sea Part 1 is also tightly woven into the gameplay like with the original games. Players must investigate various areas of Rapture and gather clues to unravel the mystery of missing girl named Sally. As they progress through the game, the players will encounter new characters and factions vying for the control of the city. Overall, Burial at Sea Part 1 offers a mix of familiar BioShock gameplay mechanics with new additions of Infinite. The story Part 2 picks up where the Part 1 left off, with Elizabeth still on mission to save Sally. The main difference is that players control now Elizabeth rather than Booker DeWitt. This change in perspective also leads to some gameplay changes. Part 2 is mainly built around stealth mechanics as Elizabeth is very poor at wielding basic weapons. She does have a silent crossbow and silent takedowns, very basic stealth game elements. I did find myself running past enemies a lot of time as they were slow to react many times. Elizabeth can also use Peeping Tom, a plasmid that makes her invisible and allows her to see through walls to avoid enemies to a greater degree. She can also distract enemies using noisemakers, which can be thrown to lure enemies away from her path. Burial at Sea Part 1 and 2 has mostly human enemies such as splicers from BioShock 1 and 2, as well as robotic foes like security drones and turrets. The DLC also introduces the Big Daddy variant called Big Brother, which can be fought or avoided depending on players' preference. Part 1 gameplay is very much a mix of BioShock 1 weapons with Infinite's gameplay. In Burial at Sea Part 2, the focus shifts to stealth, so there are fewer enemies overall, however the DLC still features splicers and security drones. I personally enjoyed both parts, though I'm usually not one to play DLCs, but Part 1 and Part 2 both received positive reviews for their engaging story. Critics praise the DLC's ability to tie together the narratives of BioShock games, as well as its explorations of themes like choice and consequence. The addition of stealth mechanics in Part 2 was also seen as a welcome change of pace from the combat-heavy gameplay of the main games. However, some reviews criticized the DLCs for its short lengths and its reliance on nostalgia for the original BioShock game. Others felt that the DLC focus on fanservice came at the expense of story's coherence. I have to say I disagree, and I do like both of these DLCs extremely much, but the stealth gameplay is shit. Like it's just not worth of stealthing around. The graphics in Burial at Sea were generally praised. They are a little bit more detailed and atmospheric in overall quality. Part 1 and Part 2 both featured the same high-quality graphics as the main game, with detailed character models and intricate environments and stunning lighting effects. One of the standout features of the DLC's graphics was the attention paid to creating the authentic 1950s aesthetic, with periodic appropriate clothing, architecture, and design elements. The underwater city of Rapture was once again brought to life in stunning detail, and the addition of new locations like the department store and the bathysphere station added to the game's overall visual appeal. The DLC also made use of some advanced graphical techniques seen in the main game, such as dynamic lighting, advanced water physics, and particle effects. Overall, the graphics in Burial at Sea were seen a major highlight of the DLC, helping to immerse players in the world of Rapture and create memorable gaming experiences. I will be now talking about the story of the game. The story, Burial at Sea Part 1, or as it's named, Episode 1. The players take control of the private investigator Booker DeWitt once again, but this time in Rapture, the underwater city from the original BIOSHOCK game. Booker is hired by a mysterious woman named Elizabeth to find a missing girl named Sally. The story takes place before the events of the first BIOSHOCK game and explores the origins of Rapture and its downfall. Booker and Elizabeth arrive at the Garden of Muses, where they are encountered by Sander Cohen, a mad artist, who demands they dance for him to inspire his muse. After the dance, Cohen reveals that Sally is in a housewares building and can only be reached with the help of Old Man Winter Plasmid. Booker and Elizabeth battle their way through the department store and eventually find Sally, who has been turned into a little sister. As Booker tries to rescue Sally, he suddenly remembers that he is actually the version of Zachary Comstock, the main antagonist of BioShock Infinite's main story. In a flashback, it is revealed that Comstock, along with the Luthor's twins, took Booker's daughter Anna in an alternate universe, but accidentally killed her while trying to bring her to their world. Comstock then used a tear device to escape his past and start a new life as Booker DeWitt in Rapture. Elizabeth, enraged by Comstock's actions, does not forgive him and instead warns him that he will pay for what he has done. As they try to leave the building, the Big Daddy that Sully was bonded to attack them. In the chaos, the Big Daddy kills Comstock before Elizabeth's eyes and the screen fades to black, ending episode 1 and setting up the story of episode 2. In Burial at Sea episode 2, Elizabeth wakes up in the toys section of Fontaine's housewares department after Atlas and his men take Sally away. Booker DeWitt's vision appears, coercing Elizabeth to claim she can help Atlas escape the sunken department store for the exchange of Sally's freedom. Elizabeth explores the store and finds her own dead body amongst the rubble. However, her powers allowed her to continue existing in some form in the multiverse, and her sense of guilt moved her to return to Rapture to clean up the mess. Elizabeth discovers that Dr. Yisho Shong knew about Columbia and built a Luthor's device connecting back to the flying city. Elizabeth realized that she can use the Luthor's particle that kept Columbia afloat to lift the department store back to Rapture. She collects equipment needed to repair the vandalized device with the reluctant help of Atlas and Shushan. Elizabeth then travels through a tear back to Columbia, recovers the Luthor's particle and returns to Rapture. Once back, she transports the hair sample to Shushan, but comes face to face with Andrew Ryan through a video monitor. He sends her an ultimatum: either join forces with him or die at the hands of his private police. Elizabeth escapes and makes her way to Frank Fontaine's private office, bringing with her the Luthor's particle to the top of sunken structure where the load-bearing columns meet. As she releases the particle and causes the building start rising, Atlas's men capture her, believing her to be more valuable than Sally. Elizabeth is overdosed with truth serum and wakes up 2 weeks later with a Rapture civil war in full swing. Atlas then tortures her by threatening to lobotomize her unless she tells him where the ace in the hole lies. Elizabeth recalls one future that she previously witnessed and tells Atlas that Ace is in Sushong's hat. She retrieves Ace from the doctor's corpse and returns it to Atlas, knowing full well Atlas will betray her. Atlas is furious at the contents of the Ace, but in one last flash memory, Elizabeth finds herself aboard the plane, transported Jack to Rapture, and recognized the code's message as Jack's trigger phrase, "Would you kindly?" She translated the code and Atlas begins a formal plan for Jack to come to Rapture and kill Ryan. Then fatally strikes Elizabeth again, leaving her alone with Sally, honoring his part of the deal. As Elizabeth succumbs into her wounds, she has one last vision of the future, revealing that Jack will be the one to end the cycle of violence in Rapture and save Sally and the other little sisters. And this is how the trilogy ends and begins endlessly. This is, in my opinion, this is a perfect example of a loop that is caused by time travel and multiple universes. And this the end of part 2 for me was the highlight of the whole trilogy, including the DLC, of course. It's just showing the ending of the first game again, the good ending where Jack is outside with the little sisters, saved Rapture, and knowing that Elizabeth created the war and caused so many people to die. And can we even blame Elizabeth for this? Because originally it's Booker's problem. But then again, Booker wouldn't have done this if Elizabeth wouldn't exist. Jack is a minor part of the trilogy, and it goes such a in-depth and one of the most well-written stories of time loops. I hope you enjoyed these reviews, and I thank you for watching.